Well, welcome everybody. This is Chris Stew with E1, and I'm excited that you're joining me today as we talk about Query Builder, which is part of the Popdock solution. And again, very specifically, these queries are, I think you're going to see by the time we get through this, they really are for somebody that it doesn't have to be a developer. That's probably one of our biggest things that we wanted to make sure that we provided. So I'm really excited that we can spend this time together. I would love to make it interactive. So if you do have some questions, I would encourage you to use the questions pane of the GoToWebinar and get your questions in there. And we'll make sure that we get through everything that we can, at the end of this. So let's get started. What's on the agenda for today? We're going to get into a couple different areas. First of all, why do you even need Query Builder? What is the purpose of this? And then again, secondly, what does it do? And then we're gonna probably spend most of our time really into a demonstration of what it actually can do for you. So again, as we're going through any of these areas, I would encourage you to put your questions into the question pane, and we'll get through as many of them as we can. So again, maybe just to reiterate, Query Builder is part of the Popdock product. And while we are talking about one very specific area of that, just so you know that Popdock is really an amazing product that helps us with so many things, whether it's the ad hoc reporting that we're going to talk about for most of the section today, or whether it is helping us move from a former system like Dynamics GP or SL or NetSuite or whatever it may be. Maybe it's just making sure that data is available inside of Business Central, or again, even just making sure other types of data are available inside of Business Central or outside of it. Popdock does a lot of those things, but our focus today is going to be on how do we build these new Business Central queries and report off of it. Okay, so why do we need it? Let's get into a few key areas here. One of the big reasons why we need to have Query Builder is that when we move to a cloud solution like Business Central, we don't have access to tables anymore, right? Many of you have been living in a world where in SQL you had access to anything you needed to, and you can write some amazing SQL queries. Well, that world is changing. Not only with our focus on Business Central, but as you start looking into other systems like expense management systems or HR systems or project systems, they're all out in the cloud. And again, nobody wants to give you access to their database anymore. So that's one of the things we have to deal with. So again, making sure that you have the capability of getting down to any piece of information inside of Business Central, even though it is inside of the cloud, is one of the main goals. Another thing, again, the title of this is that you don't have to be a developer, right, to be able to handle this. And so I haven't talked to too many people that want to write, AL code to extract that data out of there. Now, there's a few really good developers that do write AL code and love writing AL code, but they all like writing it for maybe new windows and new functions and code units and stuff like that. I haven't talked to anybody that says I love writing a query for you that's able to get all your data. So it's one of those thankless jobs, I think, for a lot of people, and this is a tool that you're going to find helps you do it, and again, not have to always go back to a developer to get the data you need. Another thing for a lot of people is you may only want a summary of the data, right? Maybe even though you have 100,000 transactions, maybe that's not what you want. Maybe you just want a summarized total by account or by customer or vendor or something like that. We can provide that for you and really, again, allow you to make an efficient query by doing that as close to the database as we can. And another thing is, building filters in, right? If you want to have a query that's only pulling last month's data, why would you pull data for the last 10 years? Right? So it's those kinds of things that really I think you're going to find help you to make the most efficient use of the resources we have. Okay, which brings us to the second question. What does Query Builder do inside of Popdock? So let's get into it. There's three main areas. Number one, it is any table inside of Business Central. So that means, again, I'm going to show you in just a second here that we can go through absolutely every table that is inside of that BC environment. And then a second line, it's not just the standard Microsoft ones. It is also anything that has been added through, an application through AppSource, the extensions there, or again, maybe it's a customization that a partner has done for you, or maybe you've done internally yourself, right? Is that we can pull all of those pieces in as well. So if you have new tables or additional fields in those tables, we can handle that scenario. The last part that I think is really, really key here is that we're making the most efficient query there is. And so you're going to get back the least amount of records, right? Because you can filter it down before you even get the data. We're making it read only. And so what this actually does, a lot of people don't know that it can do this, but Microsoft essentially has kind of a replica of the SQL data going at all the time. It's maybe a split second behind the real SQL server, but essentially it's being replicated constantly. And when we go to this read-only mode, it is pulling from that other database, which makes it even faster because now we aren't competing with other resources. Like if you have 50 people that are putting new transactions in as a sales order, sales invoice, or something like that, you're not competing with those people that have read and write access. You're now only reading from that data. So it is fully optimized. It is what Microsoft calls an API query. That's one of their newer APIs. So it's as fast as we can get the data from there, which I think is a really important part when you start talking about any type of data you want to access. Okay, so like I said, I wasn't going to kill you with PowerPoints today. We're going to get into the meat of really what is driving the solution. Okay, so we're going to start inside of Popdock, and what I want to show you is how we go about building a query. So we're going to go into my connectors. I'm going to pull up my Business Central connectors. So we're going to start in a sandbox. This is something that is going to be key. You will need to have a Business Central sandbox that you build these custom queries in, and then we'll talk to this in a second, but we will actually be pushing or publishing it to the production system. So you can see here, right, we have all of these standard lists that come out of the box with our Business Central connector. And again, you can always add lists. So now it's pulling all of the metadata. It pulls all the pages, all the queries, all those things. So we can add, any of those other ones inside of there. But again, those are pages, and there's limitations, right? They're missing fields sometimes. And so this is where this allows us like the capability of pulling across, multiple places for where that information is. But what I'm showing you now is instead of just using those standard pages, is that we have this new section in here called Query Builder. And this is where it allows us to create brand new queries that are optimized. Again, I'll just make one little aside for anybody that does or has come from the Dynamics GP world. This is essentially your SmartList Builder, right? Where you could build brand new lists without being a developer and have all the capabilities you needed to pull data. This is, again, for you, this is the equivalent inside of here. If you've never had that reference, that's fine too. You'll find how easy it is. So let me start with an existing one because this is a really cool scenario that we built here, right? I wanted to see a number of things. I wanted to see, in this example, I wanted to see all the sales rolled up by salesperson. Oh, it's taking its sweet time here. Business Central might be taking, maybe had some turkey already, has a little tryptophan and it's taking a nap. Let's try opening it again and see if it wakes up here. Okay, there we go. So now that I pull up this list, you can see we have this query builder button, and here is a nice representation. In this example, I have 4 different tables. So what I want to show you first of all is right when I click on the sales header in here, this is the first table that I've added. You get a really simple interface for pulling just the fields you want. This is key, right? When we talked about making really efficient calls to the data, if you there's 100 and some fields, maybe more, in this table. So if you try to get all that data, it's going to have, it's going to take longer, right? It's going to take more time, and you want to make this as efficient as you can. So if you only need 2 fields, that's all you got to do, right? Is if we wanted to, find, maybe we wanted some other date field, right? So I can just type in date and I can see, which one I want. So that's how easy it is to add new fields to a table. Let's talk about what if I wanted to add a brand new table. As I told you before, this pulls from every table that's inside of the Business Central system. So again, this is as close as you can get to actually writing a SQL statement, because we are actually, making these tables available to you. And again, it's all the standard ones, but it's also, if I go to the bottom, you can see here are a couple custom E1 tables that are in there. So just to show you that we can pull from multiple environments to do that. And then it's just a simple, one field from one table and to the other, and making your join. Let me just show you an example of an existing one here, right? So we have the header and then we have the lines on this. If I click on this join, what I want to show you is this is a left outer, meaning that, again, we're going to grab everything from the header, and then if there is some values in the line, we'll pull those. But just want to show you that we support all of the join types that you can do inside of Business Central. So this is really powerful, that you can build anything that you want. Again, the most common is probably a left outer, maybe an equals join, are the most common ones, but there is, again, those other options. And again, you can have more than one join field. And this one, it's right the document number, but here this is going to be the salesperson code to the code in the salesperson table. So just showing you how easy it is to work with those kinds of things. So let's go back to here. I want you to show you a couple of different things, right? You can see there's a little indicator on document type, right? So we added that column, but when I click on it, you can see there is a restriction or filter in here. And so this, again, when we're trying to make the most efficient data that we can, this is doing that, right? If I only want to see invoices, why pull back all of the records, the orders, the returns, any of those things, and then restrict it out later? Why not do it right away so that we have only the data that we need? So you can add as many restrictions as you like inside of here. And even if let me just add one for now. What if, well, okay, let me pick a different field here. Let's see, I don't have any date fields. Okay, let me add a quick date field. Here I pretended to do it, but I'll do it for now. So I now have this document date field, right? If I wanted to put a filter on here, you can see I can specify a date, but I can also, I can do even, well, I was going to do like a range of values, right? So I could say between, in this case, I could do between, and then I could have a different set of ranges on that. So you can make it so that it is, again, down to just the data that you want to see, and not have to pull 20 years of history as well. I'm going to get rid of this just so that everything in my demo works here. Just one second. So I'm just going to uncheck that one for a second. Okay, so that's the first table. But then let's go ahead and look at the salesperson table. And in this example, I only have just a couple a couple of columns in here that we've chosen to use, and that's fine. This is a different table though, and here's what's interesting about this one. We are pulling potentially a lot more information, right? We don't have a one-to-one relationship anymore. We are now going to be pulling all kinds of data. And just 1 second here. Just need to grab a drink of water. Okay, so what I'm showing you inside of here is that we want to roll everything up. So we want to take all the sales lines and we want to shrink it up and get some amounts by that particular value. So in this case, what we've done is I can just check this box to make it a summary. And then now it's going to do that rolling up for me. Again, at the SQL level, it's doing it before it's sending us the data. So that is the most powerful way that we can do that data and restrict it down. And then again, I'll show you one more thing is this amount. This amount field, well, I guess these are all fields. If we had some other field that we actually wanted to do a different summation on, we could do that. So we would probably, in this case, I would probably make this a summary for the amount and probably the quantity as well. So just showing you that you have some really amazing capabilities inside of here. Now, at the end of the day, I've done one other thing. I'm going to come back to this in just a second. I've added one column in here that has actually dimension sets, and so we'll come back to that in just a little bit. But what I want to show you right now is if we look at this, this is actually the code, right? So I told you don't have to write AL code, but just to show you why you don't want to, this is what it's generated all of this code behind the scenes so that you don't have to. So I just want to let you know that it is there. It is at the end of the day, it is doing all the heavy lifting and hard work for you on getting at that data. So now, once we have kind of our framework, right, we've added all of the tables that we need. We've, done our filters and summarized and whatever we need to do. Now we can work with those particular columns that we put inside of here. And so you can see in this example, I have everything that we've checked inside of there. I could still, if I want to, I could change it now going, hey, you know what? I actually want to do a summary of this, or I only want the max value, or, an average. You can do those kinds of things. We can change the default fields, right? So there's no defaults for now. If we wanted to, add everything in here as a default, we could do that. So you have that flexibility over how you want to set it up. You can still do calculated fields on this. But what I want to show you is we can, because I have the dimension set ID, and this is a really powerful part of just Popdock in general, but we have the capability of basically grabbing all of the dimensions on there. We can pass in the dimension set ID, right, that we have in our data set. And now I can choose and say, hey, you know what, I want the business group and the customer group and the department, but I don't need these other dimensions. So those are the 3 dimensions I want to add on there. And basically what it will do for us is it will add these in here. Again, there's no table associated with them because this is kind of a special field that we've done to make sure you can handle all the dimension scenarios that you want. And there we go. We now have those dimensions on there. All right. We built everything inside of here. The next part that you can do is we can just hit publish right here. Now I've made a couple tweaks. We'll see if we have any errors. We'll find out very shortly if we have any issues. Okay, so what is it doing right now? It's taken a few seconds. Just so you understand what's happening behind the scenes is we basically have compiled everything there. We have made it into a new extension, and we have now published it to the Business Central sandbox so that we now have a new query in there, and we now also have a list, right? The name of this list was sales by salesperson. So for the first thing, right, let's go ahead and see if we can actually see this data. So if I pull up, oops, We built it in the sandbox. And there we go, sales by salesperson. So I now should have a new list. Okay, I might have done too many roll-ups there. Well, I'm not sure what I did. But here we go. We now have a very shrunk down list that just has a summary of everything that we've done by. It looks like we have some items, and again we have our dimensions inside of here, right? So we can see that it actually has blown out. Wait, do I have the dimensions on there? No, I didn't add those. So if we did have anything in those dimensions, I'm not sure we do or not. Okay, yeah, there we go. There we go. We have those dimensions are coming in as well, which is pretty cool. So we now have this in a sandbox scenario. So one of the big things is, okay, how do we move that to production when we're ready? And so I'm gonna take one more little step. I'm gonna go back into this sandbox again because I want to show you just a couple more things. I didn't go in here before, right? We pulled up a list and we published an individual list, but what I want to show you is you will actually have one place under this extension in your Business Central connector where you can see all of the lists inside of one place. Now, we talked about customizations, right? So if you have, again, maybe it's an app from AppSource, or again, a customization that you or your partner has done for you, is that we can add that as a dependency. And so what that means is it's going to go grab everything that is sitting out. So these are all of the extensions, right, that are inside of my Business Central environment, and I'm able to again pull tables from any of those places. Now, why am I spending the valuable minutes on this? What's important is that many times, especially in the case of customizations, in the sandbox, you're building new stuff, right? You might be doing another build and another build and another build. You've published to production, but maybe you're 10 builds or 20 builds or more ahead in the sandbox. Maybe you've added some columns in the sandbox to a table that didn't exist in the one that's published to production. That's important, right? Because if you've built a list using a field that doesn't exist, well, we can't use that. So what we've done is we basically have a comparison, right, that you can do once you have those dependencies in there. It will actually do a comparison from your production environment to your sandbox environment, and then allow you to say, hey, you know what, we're going to take the lesser dependency. So anyway, I just want to let you know we've spent some time and made this work because we know how people are actually doing these specific customizations. But one last thing I'll just show you very briefly down below here. You have some control over the resource IDs. We default to the 7700, but again, if you want to start at 7800 or 52,000 or whatever it is, you have some control over the resource IDs it's going to be creating, because each new query has a resource that gets created inside of your Business Central system. And then again, you can change how you want this extension to be numbered. So right now, just for some fun testing, I have mine at version 4. And then each time that we build this, it increments this automatically for us. So just to let you know, some of those things you don't even really need to know about too much, but they are there for you to configure. Okay, so let's go to the scenario now where, okay, great, we have the list exactly the way we want it. We've made all our tweaks. We published it 5 times, and now it's ready to go to production. So what can we do? If I go and open up my Business Central production, I will show you some differences. All right, so inside of here, one thing that we'll see is I don't have a query builder piece in here, right? We know when we install a connector, whether it's a sandbox or a production. And so because we mark this as production, then the query builder isn't available. We have to build it in the sandbox first. But how do we actually, get it to production? And so essentially what you do is you say, hey, I want to point it to where that data is. And so sure enough, there we go. I can see that it is inside of my this particular connector, and then I can validate against this connector, and I can then, if everything validates one more time, again, we're looking at, do we have any dependencies that we have? Can we make sure that it'll actually publish to production? So it's doing that right now, basically doing those recompiles and making sure that it works in both places. And there we go. There's our, it's all good. And literally, this is all I need to do now. Now I can publish this. And this is now going to be a new list, a new query in my Business Central production environment. There we go. We successfully have a new connection. So now if I go into, and we'll actually add our Business Central production. You know what? I think I have an issue with one of the dimensions because I don't have that in my production, but I had it in my sandbox. Okay, that's something I have to look at. But basically, we have this same list as we publish to here. I have an issue because I have different some different dimensions in my production BC. So that's the beautiful part, right? Is that you can do all that without writing any code. And I think one of the maybe the last points that I'll bring out here, and then we'll get into the questions, is one of the reasons people want to get and create these new APIs is they may want to use it somewhere else, right? I've heard a lot of people that actually want to pull this into like Power BI or maybe even Excel, just right into the Excel Power Query type of place and do something more with it. So what we can do, I just want to show you, is that we actually do have a way of taking any type of list. So let's go ahead. If we want to create a brand new API endpoint, and I'll call this I'll just call it Query Builder just for fun. Okay, so we're going to create a new API endpoint that can be consumed by Power Query or Power BI or whatever, or again, anything else even. And I'm going to point it, because I have the sandbox one working, let's point it to that one. And so I can now pick my company, I can pick the list. So we'll pick our brand new list that we created. So here's sales by salesperson. And now what's important about this is we could actually add a parameter, right? So I could add a parameter that was called salesperson. And so again, I put a restriction on here that we're only getting one salesperson right now, but there should be like each salesperson should be on there. And so we could add a parameter that says, hey, let's actually pass in the salesperson we want to see the totals for. And so in this case, then I just map it back to my salesperson code. And now if we go into here, we basically have self-documented everything that you need to pull it into any other application. I mentioned Power BI. It could be Tableau. It could be any number of places. But if I just do a quick little example, if I wanted to get some like JSON back or OData, let's do this. I'll start with this one. So this should give us everything. If it has access, maybe that one doesn't have access. Oh, it did come back. Okay. So there we go. So this is just all the fields it's getting and grabbing all the records in there. Now that's in JSON format. Again, We said this wasn't for developers, so I apologize for that. But let's do something different here, right? We said we wanted to map back the salesperson code, right? So, well, I think these are all for Joe, so this might be a bad example. So I could put, how about we just put, well, let's misspell Joe. All right, I'll misspell Joe to Joe. If I send this through now, we shouldn't get any records, right? You can see that we don't have a salesperson for that. But if I pass through just Joe, now we get the records for Joe. So this is really powerful because, again, I can copy and paste this in, and now I can use this to get data anywhere I want in the most efficient and fastest way. All right, so let's go back. I think it's time to answer some questions in here. So if you haven't got your question in yet, I'd encourage you to do that right now, because I'm going to start digging into them. Okay, I got one out there right now. Let me just read this here. Okay, so first question is around security, is can someone who is not a system admin use this tool? So there's a couple parts to this, but you have some configuration. When you set up a Business Central connector, for example, you will get some options on how you want to set it up. If you want to set it up more of a service account, and so that basically we're saying, hey, we're going to provide credentials one time, and then everyone's going to share that, and so then we set up security on which users have access to which connectors and which lists. So that is one way, but sometimes people will actually set it up that each user has to log in with their own credentials to access their Business Central or their Dynamics CRM or whatever. So that point though is that this end user will have access, and now whatever the context is, right? If it's a shared user, that user must have access to. We have some permission sets that you'll have to have access to read some of that data, so that we can pull all the information about the tables inside of there. So if the user does not have access to those, you won't be able to pull any tables when you go into Query Builder. So that's I think that answers most of the questions there. Another question, I don't see any tables when I go to add tables. Okay, is there something else? Yes. So that's exactly what I was just talking about, is that you probably don't have this special permission that we need to make sure you have access to. And so it's just a permission set that will allow us to, again, read some of that information that's sitting in those tables. Let me look at the next one here. Okay, we have a question on, can I manually edit that code generated by the Query Builder? We've made it so that you can't today. We're trying to keep it as foolproof as possible inside of that interface. And so if you're gonna do that, we're making sure that you're writing good code, because you can't write code. So basically you have to use our interface to generate it. Now, one of the reasons we did copy it, gave you the access to the window, is if you wanted to copy it out and do something with it, put it in your own extension, you could certainly do that. But we have very purposefully said we don't want to give you access to potentially put bad code in there. Good question. Oh, okay. So then another question is, how do we export that query and use it under another tenant, another tenant's Popdock? You have the capabilities. I might just go back to show you this real quick here, because I think it's a very good question. So the question was, okay, if I go back and write this this query. Okay, so if I want to go back to, right, I got the one we want, and this is great because I've combined 5 tables and whatever, but I want to go deploy this at 5 different clients. How can I do that without redoing it every time? So what we have, and it's not inside of here. Where it's at is in this section where we can do import and export. And so if I choose export, what I can do here is that I can choose what types of data I want to move. And so if I go into, for example, if I want to go select resources, so in this example, I'm going to choose just what I want to send. And so in this case, we're going to pick a list. I'll pick that sandbox. And then I will have access to all of my lists. So it will actually allow me, say, where are you at here? There we go. It will allow me to export that, and then it can be re-imported as we bring it to another client. So you don't have to recreate this each time. You can basically make a set of lists and then just export and import them. Good question. Okay, another question out there is, are there trial versions of Popdock available to partners? For sure. I guess again, there's maybe a couple questions there. Is we do offer a trial. It defaults to like a 7-day trial, but if you need an extended one, we could do 30. But if you are a partner with E1, we give you a copy of Popdock at no additional charge. So it's part of your partner fee that we can make sure that you have access to a Popdock environment and can build and practice doing all these kinds of things. So good question. I think we have time for a few more questions. If you guys want to keep asking questions away, I'll keep answering. Okay, the question is, does the export create a query inside of Business Central? The export, like I'm right now, what I'm showing you is this export. It actually just creates the definition, and then you'll import it into another Popdock, and then you would publish. You would do the publish. So it's the publish itself that actually creates that extension and that query inside of there. So it's a 2-part process, right? Where you would import the definition for the query, and then you would, the second part is you would hit publish to make sure that it was in their system. I have a question out here that someone's asking, will this work with on-premise versions of Business Central as well? Yes, we do have a customer that is doing that. I will say this, that there's some more complications to that, because now in this example, you get into a little different licensing model, right? It's not in the cloud now. It's something that they have to get some licenses for to be able to do these customizations. Because at the end of the day, we're basically putting in customizations. We're just making it so you don't have to write the code to do that. And so there are a few things that you have to make sure that your customer has access to be able to do that. But we do have some customers doing that. Okay, that is all the questions I have for now. Oh, sorry, one more just came in here. Let me grab this one, and then we'll probably be done. Okay, so a question is, what if we've built 20 queries or 50 queries or whatever that we want with Query Builder? Does it create 50 different customizations? No, it basically is it's going to create one extension that you'll have in there, and then each time it publishes, it has all of them will be in that one extension. So it's only going to be one extension called like Popdock customizations, and that's all you'll see out there. So great question. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for their time today, and again, if you do think of some additional questions, oh, I got one more popped in. Let me grab this one too, and then we'll wrap things up. Question is, do you need to open tables or OData to access with Popdock. So I'm just trying to think. So with Popdock, what we are doing, our extension today, it is actually when you install that extension from AppSource, it is putting some queries out there. So we're putting some new optimized API queries. Those are those default lists. So that is what we're using. It's basically the Microsoft's new API. Query Builder builds, again, those new optimized queries, but then we do give you the capability of calling those OData services, right? So if you wanted a page or a query that was built on that older format, we can pull that in as well. So the question again is, do we need to open up the tables or OData to access with Popdock? Yeah, if you want to be able to read that, it is one of the things that it will be reading is any of those web services that have been published, whether they're pages or queries. Okay, I got a couple more questions. I'm just going to keep answering them. If you need to leave, feel free to do that. This is being recorded and will be sent to you to view at a later time. Okay, another question is, can we join the query with an existing list? Yes, absolutely. At the end of the day, we create the query and we make a list based off of that query. But if you then want to join that list, let's say it's Business Central data and I want to join it with some CRM data or some Salesforce data or whatever system, we can do that, right? That's part of Popdock, is it allows you to do those custom lists where I can join, again, a Business Central web service. I could join it with an on-prem SQL server, or I could join it with a CSV sitting in an Azure Data Lake. Whatever it is, I can pull those things together. Okay, I got another question here on pricing. I didn't even think to talk about that, but it's a really good question. There is no additional charge for Query Builder. It just comes with your Popdock subscription. So we're not nickel and diming you. It's just part of the solution. So if you have Business Central and install that connector, it's automatically going to be there for you to write those new queries. Okay, well, you guys have been great today. That is the last question. Thank you for your time. And again, if you follow up with some more questions that you think about later, work with your account manager and they will hunt me down. All right, thank you, everyone.